Welcome everybody back to ADHDKC Conversations, where we talk about all things ADHD. I'm Dr. Kristen Stuppy.
And I'm Sara Whelan. We're so glad you're here. Today we have a very special guest joining us, Dr. Natasha Burgert, a nationally recognized pediatrician, author, and parent educator.
Dr. Burgert's not only a nationally recognized pediatrician, but she practices right here in Kansas City. She's passionate about helping families understand their children's emotional and behavioral health. You might know her from her website, kckidsdoc.com, as a national spokesperson for the American Academy of Pediatrics, or a featured author in outlets such as the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Parents Magazine. She's also been highlighted on NBC Nightly News, CBS This Morning, NPR, and other local programs.
And if you haven't seen her new book, ta-da! Managing Childhood Anxiety for Dummies. We've all seen these books, very helpful, accessible for parents and professionals. And if you haven't seen her new book, it's fantastic. And you want to better understand what anxiety is, how to manage it, you really should check this out. And we're so excited to share that Dr. Burgert will be our next featured speaker at our ADHDKC parent group event, Tuesday, February 10th at 6:30 p.m. Central. Her presentation is called Worried and Wiggly. Perfect. Yep. Understanding ADHD and anxiety in kids. The event is free as always and online, so parents everywhere can join in. You can find the link at adhdkc.org.
Well, welcome, Dr. Burgert. We're so happy to have you here with us today.
Well, thanks for the invitation. I'm happy to be here.
Your talk, Worried and Wiggly. It's so relatable for parents. So many of our families see anxiety and ADHD in their kids. We often like to say ADHD may bring a friend, for example. Anxiety is often one of those friends. To start us off, how early can signs really show up in children?
Well, I'm a general pediatrician, just like Dr. Stuppy, and I'm sure we see kids as young as preschool and kindergarten that are already showing signs of some hyperactivity or inattention, and certainly some anxieties. Sometimes anxieties can even show up in kids that are younger. So we talk about it a lot in the office.
Yeah, parents often wonder whether behaviors are typical for that age or think their child's too young to have anxiety or ADHD. And they often really are surprised that a child can even have symptoms of both. Why do you think they go hand in hand so often?
Well, we know that anxiety during the normal developmental spectrum, as the brain grows, kids will naturally become more anxious during certain developmental periods. And those are the times that most kids experience this normal anxiety. You can think of separation anxiety when kids are toddlers, or maybe the fear of speaking in front of the class when they go up when they're in elementary school. These are normal. They're expected. They're situational. And it's how our body and brain protect ourselves from things that might harm us. So we're talking about these things specifically a lot, especially when they start to overlap with inattention. And we are often talking about both because of these natural developmental processes that happen and the natural overlap that these two conditions have in the brain.
And I hear from parents all the time who they say, I can't tell if it's ADHD or anxiety. What are some clues that may help differentiate between the two?
I think that's one of the most hardest practical parts of our job right now, especially in the younger kids who can't really articulate why they might feel scared or why they're not paying attention in class when they think their brain is working quite normally, as it is. And so we often kind of take some time. It's often multiple visits where we really get to the bottom of what the primary issue is. But really what we're trying to figure out, is the inattention really caused by distraction, or is the inattention caused by worry? For some of my bigger kids, I'll often ask the question, when you catch yourself spacing out and looking out the window, are you thinking about the Royals game? Are you thinking about the Chiefs? Or are you worried that the teacher's going to call on you next? And sometimes that will help us discern what's the primary problem. Although, just like you alluded to, Sara, they can definitely go hand in hand.
That's really helpful because it can be hard and confusing to know. So once parents have some understanding, what can they do in their daily lives to support kids with anxious brains, especially when they also have ADHD?
I think kids with anxious brains can be well supported at home and school with just normal things that you are naturally do as a parent, but maybe need to just be reminded to keep them top of mind. So the first thing that we talk about is sleep. Kids with anxiety and with ADHD, oh my gosh, they need their hours of sleep. They're so important for that brain restoration, to be able to clear those memories, to be able to work on their executive functioning learning. And we always remember too that kids grow when they sleep. And so those hours are so important for those important hormones. I think about nutrition, getting kids to try and eat 3 squares a day, which really can be hard if food avoidance is part of their anxiety spectrum, or if they're on ADHD meds and they're not, or having some appetite suppression, which is expected in many of those kids. It's hard to get 3 squares in order to make sure we're getting those nutritional components, but super important for anxious brains and ADHD brains. I think about things at home, like making good routines, using consistent structure, using picture charts, using checklists, probably many things that also people with ADHD as an adult also still use, but making those very hands-on for the kids at home, which can be really effective for families. I also encourage families just to kind of look in the mirror too. I'm sure that both of you have experienced that there seems to be a family trend for both ADHD and anxiety. Yeah. And it's really hard to parent a kid if your ADHD or your anxiety is uncontrolled. Mm-hmm. You can't be a great model to the behaviors you want your kids to have. And so sometimes that environmental change is really just getting help ourselves. And then you will notice improvement also in your kids.
That's a lot of information right there. One of the little tidbits that you mentioned was kids need their nutrition, but sometimes it's hard if they take medication for ADHD to get that nutrition, which kind of ties into a lot of parents just in general are nervous about starting medications for both ADHD and anxiety. One of the concerns might be some of these side effects, but they also sometimes will worry that ADHD medications will actually make their anxiety worse. So what do you tell families who are worried about that?
Whenever we're thinking about a medical intervention, I always want my families to list the problems we're trying to solve. What are the primary challenges that we really want to help our kids overcome? Because no medicine, whether we're talking about an anxiety medicine or an ADHD medicine, is going to solve all of our problems, right? So I really like that to be front and focused so we could really know if that intervention is helping the kiddo. That should be our primary focus. And so, of course, since Batman and Robin with ADHD and anxiety go together, sometimes when we start ADHD medicine, certainly that anxiety can kind of get a gas pedal and we'll start to see kids get more anxious. My practical experience, however, is that many times when we're treating the ADHD, the anxiety symptoms also resolve. They're so interlinked. And conversely, I have kids with primary anxiety disorders in which their attention improves once we start to get their anxiety under control. Unfortunately, for a lot of kids, sometimes this is a little trial and error, but that's why watching for what problems we're trying to solve, watching for those closely will kind of help determine what medical plan is going to be best for each individual kiddo.
Great. That's so helpful. And, depending on the treatment a family starts for their child and chooses whether that's therapy, medication, both, how do families know if it's working?
Well, there's a lot of different tools that we can use in the office. We use scoring sheets, for example, to kind of get a numeric score, if you will. I always tell families that it's really hard to put a number on anxiety, right? Because especially when we're asking kids to average their anxiety for the last 2 weeks, the kids are only going to focus on what's happening right before they came to the office, right? Mm-hmm. So those can be helpful in some ways to watch general trends, and certainly helpful to get a teacher feedback for both anxiety and ADHD. We use those commonly, of course. But I also think about just how does the family feel? How are the mornings going? What is that problem we were trying to solve? How are the sibling relationships? Is it easier to get them in bed at night? Are they staying at the table a little bit more to eat? Are they more willing to get through transitions? Are they more willing to use the environmental tools like the checklists and the flowcharts that you're trying to present to them? Are they more willing to use those without as much resistance? Those things are just as practical and as important to me as what a scoring sheet might say. So it's definitely a conversation on the effectiveness, but again, it all starts with those problems. That's what we're going to focus on making sure that those primary problems are what we address first, regardless of what and how we use to monitor the effectiveness.
So swinging them back to those original problems and helping identify where we've made improvements and maybe some other areas to continue working on. That's
Sure.
really helpful. And you're not just a pediatrician, you're an author, an advocate for mental health and kids. And I'm curious, what inspired you to write your book? And what do you hope families take away from it?
The book was really a passion project that came across my desk at the right time. Anxiety and mental health is such a common part of my practice, my day-to-day practice anymore. I was really looking for a tool that I could give to families to give them some general neurobiological information about what their child was experiencing, give them information on why their brain, their child's brain, and their brain are different and how they're the same, and give them very, hopefully, practical tools that they can try at home before they even have to seek therapy or before they even have to seek medications. Because again, anxiety is very normal. It's important for us. And it's almost expected at certain developmental phases. So if we can anticipate that, if we can prepare for those and have some good environmental structures in place, most of the time through the tips and tricks in the book, I won't even have to hear about a significant issue that requires therapy or medicine. At least that was the hope. And so that was the goal when I started writing the book, simply as a tool for families and to hopefully give them more information, especially in areas of the country and areas of the world where access to therapy and medicines is more difficult.
Yeah, I think that's so important to note that not everyone lives in a metropolitan area like Kansas City. And even here, where we have lots of therapists, it can be hard to get in because of schedules. It can be hard to afford them. Insurance doesn't always cover them. So I'm so thankful that you and other people like you have tried to educate so that people can understand, because anxiety really is there to save us. It's there to help us. If we never got worried, I always tell kids we'd walk right in front of cars because we wouldn't worry about it. Anxiety is there to help us. But if we keep looking back and forth, even though there's no cars, thinking, oh no, what if a car comes? That's where anxiety is getting in the way of staying safe. So
that's a great example.
Absolutely.
I use it all the time. That and the animals of our brain, but that's another story.
You can get too bossy, right?
So anyway, thank you so much for all of this. And then can you kind of give us a little snippet of what you're going to be talking about at your upcoming ADHDKC talk?
Yeah, I'm excited to be able to talk to your community and share some very practical tips and tricks, hopefully with your audience, that they'll be able to take home and execute the night of the presentation. So my job is just to remind the audience that kids are not little adults. They're very different. Their anxiety brains can be successfully managed by the people who love them. And we'll talk a little bit about therapy, a little bit about meds, because I do think that there is confusing information out there about those very important tools. But really, we're going to hammer home on the things that parents can do that evening to help those little anxious brains fall asleep.
Fantastic. We cannot wait to hear more on February 10th. Thanks so much for joining us today, Dr. Burgert.
My pleasure.
And if you'd like to join the free online event, visit ADHDKC.org and go to the event page and look for Worried and Wiggly, Understanding ADHD and Anxiety in Kids. It'll be on Tuesday, February 10th at 6:30 p.m. Central Time and open to all.
Yes, everyone is welcome. And don't forget to follow us, ADHDKC on Facebook, Insta, and LinkedIn for more events and resources.
And thanks for listening to ADHDKC Conversations. And until next time, take care and stay curious.